Time now for 3 on 3, where we welcome two of the sharpest people we know to discuss three of today's most interesting stories. Joining us from Washington, D.C., Armstrong Williams, commentator and radio talk show host on WWRL. And from Pensacola, Florida, Mike Papantonio, co-host of Ring of Fire on Air America Radio. Welcome both. First up, the story that has dominated the headlines for days, and rightly so, Muslim outrage over the Pope and his controversial speech on Islam. Mike, do you see the irony in Islamic leaders denouncing the Pope for suggesting that Islam somehow abets violence and then encouraging their followers to commit violence?
Well, the problem is right now, if we were to pick one of the most explosive, delicate issues that the entire Western world is facing, it's the balance of the strained relationship with the world of Islam. And so that's what's important to me. This is not the time to not pay attention to political correctness. Unfortunately, political correctness matters right now.
Well, wait a second. So in other words, we're being held hostage by a bunch of lunatics who hurt other people who disagree with them, and we should just sort of do what they say, or else they'll hurt us?
No. The truth is, Tucker, right now there's 1 billion Muslims worldwide. Right. If the Pope advisors chose to put the Muslim issue, this criticism issue out there to promote a dialogue, now is not the time to do it. You understand, this man's very different from Pope John Paul II. John Paul II was always trying to find common ground, Tucker. He was always trying to find common ground between the common faith to try to unite Christians and Jews and Muslims. And he always was there to remind people that all of that unites under one God. This is a different Pope, and I don't know why, but if you recall, this is the Pope that made a speech several years ago where he said that only the Roman Catholic Church provides the path for salvation. Now is not the time for more divisive language. Right. And whoever's handling this guy, whoever is his inside advisor, his speechwriter, made a terrible mistake when they didn't look at what he was about to say, when they allowed him to do this.
Okay, Armstrong, apparently, according to news reports, this Pope Benedict writes his own speeches. These were his own words. Do you blame him?
You know what? Listen, I'm glad he does write his own works. I mean, you know, people are just a little sick and tired of these Muslim extremists feigning respect. I mean, they go around the world, these Muslim extremists, they blow people up, they alter the landscape of the world, the Al-Qaeda issues a directive to take out the Pope, they kill a nun, assassinate her. I mean, this is barbarian, this is savage behavior. The only thing the Pope was doing was quoting someone early on in this history who talked about the inhumanity of the extreme Islam. The Pope was absolutely right. He should have never apologized. You know, people are just a little tired of this fake respect of this Muslim world. What it shows is that the Muslim world, these Arab states, are losing respect because they have this double standard where it's okay for us to do whatever we want to do, our ungodly and dastardly acts, but yet they want to hold the Pope and everybody else to a different standard. Well, you know what? People are just a little sick of this. The Pope was absolutely correct, and he should take a stand. He should never apologize, and he should have never backed down.
Okay, well, from international disputes to domestic ones, John McCain, his dissent from the president's detainee interrogation. Armstrong Williams, do you think, having been around politics a while, this is a smart move for John McCain to separate himself from the president's position on interrogating detainees?
Well, it may not be a smart move, Tucker, but listen, the most important thing that we have as Americans is our high moral standard and our honor. And regardless of how they treat us as detainees, the one thing that we hold around the world is that we do not compromise our moral standard and our honor. And we cannot give these rogue states and these rogue nations an opportunity to rewrite their interrogation laws so they can continue doing the same things that they're doing now. Even if we are the only ones upholding these laws, no matter what our enemies may do, no matter what they may do, we have an obligation to be the moral example of the rest of the world. And I think Senator McCain, serving in war, have been lived during those times, can understand that more than anybody else. You have a lot of people speaking on this issue who have not served in war, who have no idea what it means to be captured, to be in combat. If you go back to the early years to Vietnam and World War I and World War II, what was most effective for these interrogators were getting to know people through kindness and understanding and a higher moral standard, and they were able to get more information and help the cause than using this to use these prisoners
Armstrong,
where you beat them up.
Armstrong, I agree with you on part of what you said. Really, if you look at the Geneva Convention, in 1949, you had Dwight D. Eisenhower that said, we came out of the World War II, we saw how soldiers were mishandled. It was Dwight D. Eisenhower who pushed forward these ideas of a Geneva Convention that protected soldiers. Listen to this. You have 14 American generals that were critical of this president, admirals and generals that said that the Geneva Convention is there to protect soldiers. You had 54% of the American public say that the Geneva Convention actually protects American soldiers. This is a fight not between Republicans and Democrats. This is a fight between chicken hawks and the Bush administration and real soldiers who've been in combat.
Slow down, Mike. Hold on, wait. That's so unfair that I've just got to stop there. I'm not even sure where I stand on this personally, but I do think it's unfair to suggest that people who have not served in combat have somehow less a right to speak out about America's foreign policy. I mean, most women haven't served, gay people haven't served. Just because you haven't served doesn't mean that you don't have every bit as much a right as anybody else to comment on what your country is doing.
Let me pick up what Armstrong just said. Here's the way I look at it. This fight really is about protecting Rumsfeld and protecting a small crowd of Bush underlings against being prosecuted for the War Crimes Act. That's what this is about. The common article number 3 of the Geneva.
Do you think the United States has committed war? Do you think the U.S. has committed war crimes?
If you take a look at the common Article 3 of the Geneva Convention, there are a lot of people, not just Mike Papantonio, talking about the fact that a lot of these people fall squarely within what the common Article 3 was supposed to be.
You believe that the leaders in the U.S. government have committed. See, this is where the left. This is where you lose me. Okay, it's one thing to be against the war in Iraq. It's another thing to say. It's another thing to say that we ought to abide by the Geneva Convention. Fine, I'm on board with both those. But to say that our leaders have committed war crimes, that's when you know what, you're off in Jane Fonda land, and you're not on my side anymore.
But it's not. If you take a look at it, and I'll tell you what, George Bush, I can promise you, has never read the Geneva Convention, or he'd understand how important it is to protecting U.S. soldiers.
Interrogation should be the least road we should travel. We should restore our honor and integrity for the rest of the world. That's
speaking of war crimes, there are countries that have committed war crimes. One of them is Iran. And tomorrow at the United Nations, it should be quite a day because President Bush will make a speech there in the morning, focusing on the threat Iran poses to the world. And just hours later, Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad will speak in the exact same room. The White House has said it wants to pursue diplomatic relations with Iran in some way, and yet Bush refuses to meet with the Iranian president, even though they're going to be there at the same time. Listen to the explanation.
I certainly hope we never have to use our military again. On the other hand, if diplomacy fails, the United States is have to leave all options on the table. I'm confident diplomacy can work.
Would you be willing to perhaps meet face-to-face with Ahmadinejad, and would this possibly be a breakthrough, some sort of opportunity for a breakthrough on a personal level?
No, I'm not going to meet with him.
Huh. It's Armstrong Williams, what do you think of that? I mean, I can sort of see it both ways, but why not take the guy's there and you've got a message for him? What's the downside?
I think, Tucker, we have to be very careful when we put the prestige of the President of the United States and this great nation on the line to meet with someone like the President of Iran. He's shown no diplomatic tact. He's shown no respect for the right for Israel to exist. Some of the things that he has said has been outrageous. He just returned from that conference where those stations where they had an effigy of Bush looking like Hitler, and he condemned the president. If he had the grace and the dignity...
Wait, I mean, the point is not whether he has grace and dignity. The question is whether he's got a nuclear program. I mean, look...
He's not deserving. He has not earned the right to meet with the president of the United States. I'm sorry.
But here's, now, Mike, I can see what you're going to say. I mean, I can anticipate you're going to say, why shouldn't he meet with him? It's arrogant not to meet with him. On the other hand, wasn't it liberals who attacked Bush for conducting an unusually and, as they said, overly personal foreign policy, where he, complimented Putin and said he looked into his soul, and you know what I mean? So who cares?
Tucker, not long ago you did a good story on cowboy diplomacy of Bush. I remember the story. I thought you handled it really well. Time magazine did a cover story on George Bush cowboy diplomacy. They said it hasn't worked in 5 years and it's still not working. The truth is, if Bush had his finger on the bomb button during the Cuban Missile Crisis, more than 3/4 of this country would still be radioactive, and that scares Americans. This is a man. It's an all-time low in statesmanship when you have a president that's afraid to carry on a face-to-face diplomatic discussion with a man who is as crazy as this Iranian president. This is an Iranian president who said that he'd like to wipe Israel off the map. Those are the people we should be talking to. Tucker. And, you know, right now what's happened is you have a
What, to convince him not to wipe Israel off the map? We're not going to, I mean,
well,
come on.
you know, but you don't get there. You don't get there by not talking. You don't get there by closing the door to diplomacy.
Someone should talk, but it shouldn't be our president.
Armstrong, Williams, I'm sorry, we're totally out of time. Mike Papantonio, thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.